June 11th, 2025. It's a date that now just hangs in the air, heavy with silence in the musical world. Brian Wilson, the genius behind the Beach Boys, the man who pretty much built the California sound, has passed away at the age of 82. His life was this amazing, complex mix of breathtaking talent and gut-wrenching struggles, and it hit so many people so hard that it actually inspired a song by a group of young Canadian musicians, a song that kicks off with a line that many of us know by heart.
Drove downtown in the rain, 9:30 on a Tuesday night.
That iconic line written by Stephen Page of Barenaked Ladies isn't just some catchy lyric, it's really a window into a complicated and deeply human story. It's about empathy, it's about the almost unbearable weight of being a creative genius and finding comfort in knowing you're not alone in your vulnerability. But what's the full story behind the song? As we remember Wilson, who passed away this week at the age of 82, let's explore what sparked their tribute, how it mirrored Wilson's own life, and what Wilson even thought of the song. This is a story of a song that became an anthem and the legend who, without even knowing it, helped write it. To really get Barenaked Ladies tribute, we need to first go back to Hawthorne, California, where Brian Wilson's story kicked off. Born in 1942, he was a gifted musician, and by the time he was in his early 20s, with his brothers Dennis and Carl and cousin Mike Love and their friend Al Jardine, Brian Wilson wasn't just writing songs, he was building whole worlds of sound. The Beach Boys, with him leading the creative charge, basically became the sound of American optimism in the early 60s. Tunes like Surfin' USA and I Get Around and California Girls weren't just pop hits, they were these rich, layered soundscapes full of those signature Wilson harmonies and clever arrangements. But that bright California sun also cast some pretty long, dark shadows. Behind all those breezy surf anthems, Wilson was dealing with serious mental health issues, made even worse by an abusive father and the crushing pressure of fame. Late in 1964, right when the Beach Boys were at their peak, he had a nervous breakdown and made the tough call to stop touring. This step back, though, wasn't really the end. It was rather a shift. It let him pour his energy into the studio, and that led to what many people think is his masterpiece, the album Pet Sounds in 1966. That record even influenced the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. After Pet Sounds, Wilson then dove into something even bigger, the legendary unfinished album Smile. The Smile Sessions, that was a time of intense, almost frantic creativity. Wilson, always searching for new sounds, famously had a sandbox built in his living room, with his piano right in the middle, trying to bring the beach indoors. Moments of quirky genius for sure, but they were all tangled up with his worsening mental health and drug use. Capitol Records also had no interest in releasing it, so the project was shelved, a decision that did haunt Wilson for years. This was when his more well-known reclusive bed years started, times when he just isolated himself for long stretches. That very detail, of course, would later be captured in the Barenaked Ladies song.
Lying in bed, just like Brian Wilson did. Well,
he was later diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, fighting off auditory hallucinations and deep depression. It was like his private torment was unraveling in public, a stark in contrast to the joyful music he'd given the world. Fast forward a few decades later to a basement in Scarborough, Ontario, and frontman Stephen Page penned the song Brian Wilson as a 20-year-old student at York University. He was co-fronting a quirky, smart, up-and-coming band called Barenaked Ladies. For Page, he saw parallels in his and Wilson's own personal struggles. Page speaks to Wilson's image as a rock and roll casualty and how he wanted to bring more nuance to the discussion of mental health in rock music. The song starts perfectly capturing that restless longing for something feeling. It chronicled Page's many late-night visits to Sam the record man in Toronto.
just to check out the late night record shop.
The song doesn't pull any punches about specific, sometimes painful parts of Wilson's life. The unforgettable chorus is a direct nod to Wilson's reclusive times. When Barenaked Ladies wrote the song, Brian Wilson was still under a pretty harsh public spotlight, often painted as this eccentric recluse, a genius swallowed by his demons. Barenaked Ladies song sliced right through that simplistic picture. It wasn't a song that made fun or felt sorry for him. It was a song that got it, or at least really tried to. It also dealt with the feeling of being totally overwhelmed, something we can probably all relate to. Page has also said that he wanted to fight the stigma around mental health to get past the rock and roll casualty cliche. The song, in its own offbeat, pop-infused way, did just that. It made it a little more okay to talk about these things, at least before Bell Media pretended to care about it. I'm sure my Canadian subscribers will get that reference. The song Brian Wilson first showed up on Barenaked Ladies' 1990 demo tape, Barenaked Recess, and then on their successful 1991 indie release, The Yellow Tape. It also reached its biggest audience on their major label debut, Gordon, in 1992. Gordon was a monster hit in Canada, going diamond, and Brian Wilson quickly became a fan favorite and a regular part of their live shows. The song's mix of a catchy tune, quirky instruments, and a genuinely empathetic lyrics just seemed to strike a nerve. Page stated about the Beach Boys' music, "Even then as a teenager, I could hear in the music this kind of struggle between light and dark, and that really appealed to me." The references in the song, while very specific to Wilson's life, like Dr. Landy, Smiley Smile, The Sandbox, also connected those universal feelings of being lost or looking for comfort in familiar things like a late-night record shop, and the desperate hope for things to get better. The lyric, "Call it impulsive, call it compulsive, call it insane," really speaks to those internal fights with our own mind, the patterns we can sometimes feel stuck in.
Call it compulsive, call it insane.
It was this ability to be universal, even while being a specific tribute, that gave the song such a lasting punch. Eugene Landy was a controversial celebrity psychologist. His hourly fee, adjusted for inflation, would have been roughly $1,500 in today's terms. Although Wilson and Landy only had a client-therapist relationship for about a year in 1975, the two struck up a working relationship again in 1982, which had Landy as not only his personal therapist, but also his executive producer, his business manager, co-songwriter, and business advisor. After his professional license was revoked in 1989, and in 1992 a restraining order was put in place preventing Landy from ever contacting Wilson again. Yet the two were so close that Landy was named as a beneficiary in Wilson's will. In the song, the Barenaked Ladies allude to the degree of control that Landy had over Wilson, and how Wilson hoped Landy thought of their relationship as more than just a teacher and a student. The story then takes an even stranger turn. Brian Wilson, the guy the song was all about, eventually heard it, and he didn't just hear it, he liked it so much he performed it himself while on tour in 2000. In this wonderfully surreal, full circle kind of moment, Page ended up attending one of Wilson's tour stops in Toronto that he did with Paul Simon. Page had heard that Wilson had performed the song in concert at previous shows, but the Barenaked Ladies frontman was shocked when Wilson opened the show with the Barenaked Ladies song. Page recalled, "Every musician in Toronto was sitting around us, and they all kind of turned their head to look at me." Page ended up joining Wilson and Simon for the encore to sing Wilson's Love and Mercy and the Beach Boys' Fun, Fun, Fun. Wilson's version of the Barenaked Ladies song ended up on his 2000 live album, Live at the Roxy Theatre. Wilson once commented on a Reddit Q&A about the song, stating, "I was honored that they would use my name, but it embarrassed me a little bit because I was lying in bed a lot."
Lying in bed like Brian Wilson did.
Not only that, but Wilson even dropped by the studio when Barenaked Ladies were recording their album Maroon in 2000 and played them his version of the song. According to Page, he stated, "We totally freaked out." When the band met Wilson and heard him sing the song, he jokingly changed the lyric to piano, explaining to the band that he couldn't actually play the guitar. Coincidentally, both Barenaked Ladies and the Beach Boys were five-man bands, and the Barenaked Ladies also took heavy inspiration from the Beach Boys' playful approach to instrumentation. Page and Wilson also shared similar personalities in terms of their own struggles. Stephen Page was arrested for drug possession in 2008 after his first marriage broke down, and has also publicly shared that he suffered from bipolar disorder since he was a child. He ended up leaving Barenaked Ladies in 2009. The song, meanwhile, peaked at number 18 on the charts in Canada, and it later charted in the US on the Hot 100, peaking number 68, thanks to a live version on their Rock Spectacle album. The 1997 live cut cracked the American charts and turned Brian Wilson into a concert staple. The Barenaked Ladies even got the honor of playing Brian Wilson at a pre-Grammy tribute where Wilson was being celebrated as the Music Cares Person of the Year in 2005. They were the only act to perform a song that wasn't written by Wilson himself. Following the news of Wilson's death, Page did put out a statement that read, "Obviously, I was sad to hear that Brian had passed. It's been a tough couple of years for him. I think with his declining health and the loss of his wife Melinda. Now, with Brian Wilson's passing on June 11th, the song takes an even heavier, if not sadder, meaning. That lyric, lying in bed just like Brian Wilson, which once described a period in his life, now carries the weight of his final absence. The song, already a tribute, now feels like an elegy. It's a reminder not just of his struggles, but of his incredible world-changing talent, his strength, and the huge impact he had on so many, including those young songwriters who looked up to him. That brings us to the end of today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. As always, if you have suggestions for future topics, let me know in the comment section below, and we'll see you again on Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.